there I am. It's great to be here today. Thank you for the invitation. I'm excited to be here, but I'm also excited because in a couple of weeks I'm going to go to one of my most favourite places in the world. It's on a wee island right up in the north, right on the edge of Scotland. Although if they are there, people know what you say, it's Scotland's on the edge and they're in the centre, but that's how you see the world. But in there is a place called the Ring of Brodgar. It's standing stones that are about 5,000 years old. And it's an incredible place to go, and I love to stand there just at dusk as the sun goes down and think of 5 millennia of human beings who've gathered there for different reasons and been taken in by the wildness and the silence and the sense of history beneath your feet and connection to humanity in your heart. It's an extraordinary place to just remind yourself of what it is to be alive and part of the whole human tribe. Just beside there's an incredible archaeological dig where they've discovered what they're calling a cathedral, although obviously that's a kind of modern name for an old place, where people used to gather 5,000 years ago for celebration and dancing and eating and all that kind of stuff. Now, of course, being archaeologists, they know this because they dug in the Midden. What a great job an archaeologist is. You spend digging other people's rubbish. It's also a disconcerting thing to think that in reality, you might think it was your digital footprint that'll be your legacy, but actually, it'll be your rubbish that people will look at when they want to know what you got up to in the rest of your life. But what's extraordinary about that is that they've discovered, from digging in that Midden, that folk gathered on a regular basis 5,000 years ago from different parts of Orkney to meet together on a regular basis. Now, they didn't have Google Maps in those days and Outlook calendars and all the rest of it. They just had the stars and the seasons to know when to arrive together. There, in their tough reality of life there, they took time to use those things of nature to be together, to build community, to build their tribe in whatever form that came, to nurture those relationships, because that was how they lived and coped with living in that place all those years ago. And why did they do that? Because at that primal level, we are fundamentally social beings. We find out who we are in the quality of the relationships we have and the time we spend in nurturing those relationships. That is the heart of our existence. The moral philosopher John McMurray, who was in Edinburgh in the 1950s, says that all seeking of knowledge is for the sake of action, and all actions are for the sake of relationships and meaning. It is that we seek at the heart of who we are. Because the moment we drop out the womb, we are in relationships. Our well-being, our health lies in the relationships of those around us and the quality of them. And if they're not as they should be, then that can be damaging for us. If they are as they should be, that is the space and the place when we begin to flourish. We find out who we are and why we are and what we can be. Relationships define us and are how we define ourselves. There's some extraordinary work done around what are called adverse childhood experiences, where folk have discovered that folk who are in tough realities are often there because they couldn't be in the relationships they needed to be, or the relationships they had were damaged in their early life and their development. So did they experience alcohol and drugs? Did they experience violence? Did they experience neglect? Did they experience poverty in all that they did in their early lives? And if they did, they were more likely to end up in jail, more likely to end up in ill health and the other damaging places. But what's really interesting about that is not just that connection between adversity and broken relationships and tough realities, but those who had those experiences and didn't end up in that place. And Swansea University looked at that group, and what did they discover was the commonality? Wasn't that they'd done a programme or had an intervention or got a job. The common feature in their lives was that they had a trusted adult to whom they could turn whenever they needed them. It could have been their scoutmaster, it could have been their teacher, it could have been their football coach, it could have been just somebody's granny who wasn't trying to fix them or sort them or make everything better. They were just there for them. And in that space, they discovered the potential to be who they were. In St. Enians, we journey with a lot of people who are in tough realities, and what we know is that solutions lie not in telling someone how they should fix their lives, but journeying with somebody so that they can discover in themselves and in that relationship the potential they may have. I'm going to give you 3 examples. One is a new community that we've set up in a small flat in Leith. And it's for folk who've been in hospital because of mental health challenges. And one of them told me when he got to this place, he said, "This is the first place I call home." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Well, for the last 6 years, my home has been a bed with a curtain round it." And he'd been in that ward so long that he'd literally become homeless and friendless. Because he'd lost his tenancy and his friends stopped coming, because it was hard work, always coming to that space as he was struggling to get his meds right and all the rest of it. And then the medical profession said, "Well, we can't let him go until he's ready." Who decides he's ready? He should decide when he's ready, not someone else. So he came to us and he said, "I call this home because I got to choose the duvet cover and my curtains and my carpet and when I eat and who I eat with." Those were the things that mattered. And now, his hobby, his place of purpose, the thing he does to flourish, is have folk round for coffee and cake. And he does that so he can raise money for other charities. He runs his own wee coffee morning in his home so that he can help others. Now, he still has to take his meds, but those meds only work because of all the other things that are around him, the relationships he's in a position to be part of. Also run a garden in that same hospital grounds. And it's a garden where folk come from the hospital, patients and staff, and folk from the community. And we build a community around growing stuff, and growing it, and harvesting it, and having meals together. Because we know that people with mental health challenges are often more likely to become socially isolated as a result of that, and therefore more likely to become homeless. So this is a chance to try and get folk intervene early on so that they don't end up in that circumstance. And we did that because it was about creating community and relationships, and it really worked. But then we discovered it began to work in a way we hadn't expected. Because we discovered that the patients who came to the hospital actually came to the gardens, actually spent less time in hospital. So we said to the NHS, "Well, you know, we're helping you do your job too. How about a wee bit of recompense?" "Yeah, not a bad idea." Do you know, they said yes. Although, interestingly, the reason they said yes was the staff also said, "Do you know, actually, we like going to the gardens too." And the man would go, "Well, I got 2 for 1 here. Healthier patients and happy staff. Who wouldn't do it? You're pity." And I remember one guy saying to me, he said, I'm going to get this to work eventually. He said, "The reason this works for me is because when I see people eating food that I have planted and grown and harvested and cooked, I feel I'm special. I feel I belong." Who knew that eating food could change somebody's life? But it does. Of course, the wee irony is that patients can come out and eat the food, and it's great, but I can't sell the food to the hospital for them to be in the wards because I don't meet the procurement standards. But that's another story, and I'll go there somewhere else. That's about it. One last story. We've just set up a project for veterans, support veterans who've got PTSD and other mental health challenges. We've done it because what we're doing is supporting not the veterans themselves directly, because they have a clinical need, but their families. Because we know the families are part of the solution if we let them be, not part of the problem. Because what often happens is they go through the challenge, the veteran goes through the challenge, and it actually damages the relationships because they can't really deal with it, they don't know how to deal with it, and then that breaks up, and that makes the problem even worse, and it's a spiral. So we're supporting the families to be part of the solution by focusing on the relationships that they have. And what's exciting about that is that that was actually instigated by the NHS Mental Health Fund, who understood that they needed to stop just seeing the presenting medical issue and start seeing not just the whole person, but all the relationships that made that person who they are and who they might be if they're given the right opportunity. We understand that it is in relationships that flourishing can really happen. So when I go to the Ring of Brodgar, I'm listening. I'm listening for those 5,000-year-old voices telling me about being in relationship, being in community, being in tribe, being whatever we wish to call it. They knew that then, and we know it now. We are called, I believe, to serve the neighbour and the stranger and even those who might describe themselves as our enemy. And we do that first and foremost by finding the ways of building relationship so that not just they, but we can flourish and truly be the human beings we wish to be.